Good evening, and this is Q News Tonight, the world's first live daily gay evening news show, and it's 7 p.m., Monday, February 3rd, 2020. Q News Tonight is live and unscripted, so anything can happen. Tonight we bring you the news and a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and these are my co-anchors, Aaron Darr and Napoleon Plays. So let's cue up the news. We first have breaking Q news tonight about #Breakaway. As you know, #Breakaway is the LGBT organization that is very strongly in support of Donald Trump and encouraging the LGBT community to walk away from the Democratic Party in support of conservative, Republican, and President Trump. Over the weekend, #WalkAway had its 5th event in the United States in San Francisco, and there was a significant protest that caused cancellations literally moments before the event. We've prepared this breaking Q news for you. Watch this.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Brandon, and we are here outside of the Women's Building in San Francisco. This was to be the site of the LGBT Town Hall, WalkAway LGBT Town Hall. 4 out of 5 of the WalkAway LGBT Town Halls have been canceled by the venues. WalkAway has done events for the Black community, for the Hispanic community. The rally hasn't even started yet. But we will not be deterred. We will not stop. The WalkAway LGBT Town Hall will go on. Don't put your hands on me. Do not put your hands on me. You're touching me right now. Get your hands away from me.
Nobody's touching you, shithead.
We are not going to stop. We will not be deterred. The show will go on, and we are now having a freedom rally outside of the Women's Building in San Francisco.
You're the fascist. You're the fascist.
We will not stop.
You're pushing me.
All right. Call the police. Call the police right now.
Push me and you're going to get pushed back. So fuck off. You're going to jail.
Yeah, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. You're going to jail.
Well, as you can see, the national director of #WalkAway, Brandon Stryker, was reporting on the street right before the event in San Francisco. #WalkAway has had 5 events in the United States, and 4 of them have been canceled so far at last minute for various justifications by principally the housing organization of the event itself, the meeting hall. The most notable is a lawsuit that is currently going on over the LGBT Center in New York City as they canceled the #WalkAway event in New York. Brandon Straka and #WalkAway is suing the LGBT Center in New York for the cancellation. This is the 4th of the 5th cancellation, and it is basically over protesters convincing the organizational location of the event for #WalkAway to participate in the cancellation. We continue to cover this breaking news as it affects the LGBT community, the politics of election vote 2020, and of course, Donald Trump. What do y'all think about what we've just watched in this breaking Q news?
Well, I think how we just saw people behave, particularly the protesters. Violence is never okay, and the whole situation, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in terms of a court of law, but if I were a judge, you know, this is restricting someone's freedom of speech, and whether or not you politically agree or disagree with that, I probably would have to side with Brendan on this. However, it's a shame because it comes at the cost of the LGBT Center in this lawsuit where Brendan will likely be financially, what is the word I'm looking for? Compensated.
Yep.
And those are funds that are being taken away from his LGBT brothers and sisters.
I'm curious to your reaction about this protest that we have just watched, breaking Q News in San Francisco. I understand the objection to Donald Trump and the politics that we're watching and all of the related issues. Of course, we all understand that. But I'm a little confused in terms of why we feel like they can't gather and express their free speech rights. Am I getting this First Amendment issue wrong?
I don't think you're getting the issue wrong. I just think that when some people either feel attacked or like their own rights are threatened, that's when you start to get the pushback that you're getting now. Everyone feels entitled to a certain level of rights as dictated by our own Constitution. And what we're seeing is two people or two groups of people that are opposing to that, even if they have the same end goal in mind. And that's something that we discuss all of the time within the LGBTQ community, excuse me, is how we can sometimes fight for the same goal and approach it at such different levels that nobody wins.
My last question to you in curiosity, the hashtag WALKAWAY moment tonight begins for all intents and purposes the election. The Iowa caucuses go on this evening right after Q News goes off of the air. Do you think that there's going to be significant growth in the walkaway movement in the LGBT community? What do y'all think?
Well, I think if there's one thing that we know that the Republican Party is good at, it's bait and switch. And this is nothing more than part of that vast far right-wing conspiracy that just does nothing but divide us politically, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, so left or right. It's unfortunate because, again, it's perpetuating false notions to be facts, and that's when it becomes dangerous.
Mm. And that's something that we do to ourselves, too. I mean, we're seeing it right now with the Iowa caucus. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail later, just how we will divide ourselves over our own candidates and have to hedge our bets and figure out how to best get to that outcome after the primaries.
Well, our breaking Q news about the hashtag breakaway that was canceled in final moments before it went on. We continue out of our breaking Q news and Q up the world. And we're reporting tonight that a Chinese doctor on the mainland who warned the world about the coronavirus has been reprimanded by authorities for his actions. Aaron, tell us about what's going on here in China.
Yes, but what else? We see more censorship out of China. A doctor who has issued a text warning about the outbreak of the coronavirus has been arrested. When the illness struck 7 patients initially at a hospital in late December, Dr. Li Wenliang sent a text in a group chat that said, quote, "quarantined in the emergency department," unquote. And yet, but 3 days later, he was made to sign an affidavit admitting that his text constituted, quote, "illegal behavior," unquote. So Dr. Li's message was shared outside of an online group, yet police now in China are going after a wide variety of doctors for spreading what they are calling rumors about the coronavirus. They've issued a warning to the public stating that, quote, "the police call on all individuals to not fabricate rumors, to not spread rumors, and not to believe rumors," unquote. In a statement, health officials have called the illness, quote, "preventable and controllable." We know that obviously it's becoming an epidemic across China, and Chinese officials are under widespread criticism for continuously downplaying this virus and being too slow to respond to take action. So unfortunately, the story continues to develop.
That's always part of the conversation when we see anything that could bar on an epidemic or something that affects the country to this level is not just how the country or ruling power responds to the actual crisis or outbreak, but also what information they give out. There's the twofold approach to it. And while some people are criticizing what's happening with the virus itself, others are not believing the information that's coming out. Yes. That's a little bit of what we see in this story.
The coronavirus continues to dominate the world news, even in America when impeachment or Donald Trump or the election is such a dominant subject. Coronavirus is dominating world news. China is, for all intents and purposes, in isolation now. Many countries, including the United States, allowing no one to enter the United States that has been in China, which means 1.4 billion people can no longer travel to America. The Russian border is completely closed. And it's been reported over the weekend since we have broadcast that 70,000 people have been diagnosed in Wuhan with coronavirus. So this is dramatic news. We continue in queuing up the world. by going to the Middle East. And Ukraine has announced today that they claim that they have recordings that show and prove that Iran knew instantly the jetliner was hit by an Iranian missile. We've prepared this. Watch this.
We'll roll the video and talk you through it. Now, it's coming in from a westward direction. Left to right on your screen. You can't see the Ukrainian Airlines aircraft. It's just too dark, but it was climbing out of Tehran International Airport. And you'll see now the moment the two collide. There's then another object that you'll see spin off into the distance, probably the aircraft. We've seen other video of the aircraft on fire before it explodes.
In addition to that video, the pilot's black box has also been released, the recordings from that. And that is where we've gotten absolute evidence that they have not only falsely reported that they were unaware, Iran, that it was a missile that launched down the aircraft, but also that it was hidden for multiple days. As we've seen now, Ukraine's president and the head of the Iranian investigation team have both confirmed the authenticity of both the video and the report from the black box. So there is not any more he said, she said. There is just the level of why aren't we getting the correct information? And then on top of that, some people have stated that they no longer trust the level of where this information is coming from, just as we stated before, simply because of not just the time frame that it took, but also that it was published, that recording was published in Ukraine. So there are frustrations from that publishing.
We come out of queuing up the world to queue up the USA. News in Facebook today, as Stephen King, the noted author, has called it quits. And he cites his justification of leaving Facebook because of the false information that continues to be distributed in Facebook. Napoleon, tell us about what's going on here with my favorite author, Stephen King.
Stephen King, the author of over 50 books that are of the horror and sci-fi genre. They have been adapted into many hit movies as well as TV shows, even recently as much as It, Parts 1 and 2, has stated that he's quitting Facebook, that he's not comfortable with the flood of false information that's allowed in its political advertising, nor is he confident in its ability to protect its users' privacy. He says to follow him on Twitter because he's leaving Facebook. This comes after the January 9th Facebook statement that they are not going to ban political advertising or have any sort of fail-safe measure to avoid what is being called fake news or the lies that are presented from ads and politicians on it. We've seen this becoming a recurring battle among many of celebrities, politicians, and others through Facebook. Facebook does allow advertisers to target small groups with ads, and he says that that's part of the problem.
I'm curious, when I was seeing the advance of you preparing this story about what Stephen King was doing, my first thought was, okay, well, what would we do to prevent misinformation in the largest social media platform in the world? Really, for a moment, let's consider that. What can Facebook do to...
Well, there's a system that's already in place and has been in place where an individual, so a user on Facebook, can actually report information as being false or of hate speech or what have you, going against community standards. So I know that's something that they've tried to do in the past to flush out some of these false narratives, but again, for Facebook to come out and so publicly make a statement saying that they're not going to cut back on the political advertising, even if it is false narrative, it's very concerning in an election year.
We continue in queuing up the USA to continue a story that we reported on last week. It was announced today that Iowa Republicans caved on excluding transgender people from the state civil rights protections. Napoleon, tell us about what's happening in Iowa.
Yes, it's a big time for Iowa with the caucus and many other stories. There is a new bill that was proposed a bit ago that has stated that removing gender identity as a protected class under the Iowa Civil Rights Act would be presented, meaning that they wanted to block trans rights. And that bill is now officially dead. Quotation, it's dead. It just would have had a lot of unintended consequences, and that's from Holt, the chair of the Judicial Committee in Iowa. This comes after the 2018 ban, the trans bathroom ban that we remember from 2 years ago.
Which they also
yes,
dropped.
they also dropped that bill. So we're seeing Iowa stand up for their trans community with bills that are going through, but then not actually getting passed in any capacity, even if they're being presented.
In your reporting of this story, was there any, besides the statement that the chairman said, Was there any reflection that there was pressure on them to?
Oh, absolutely. And not just from the ACLU, who was pushing forward that the bill would set Iowa back in time by many decades, but also just from other supporters, people that had individual claim in a lot of the individual statements of the bill. There were a lot of targets in the trans community, whether it be from feeding mothers to all sorts of different aspects of the trans community that garnished a lot of opposition.
Well, we continue to focus on Q News Tonight and its value, and I know you have some observations about that.
That's true. We want to know, are LGBT voices important to you? Can the news of the world have a gay community perspective? If you, like us, think the answer is a resounding yes, then like and subscribe to Q News Tonight on YouTube and Facebook. Do our cultural values impact you, your stories, and family? Start a watch party. It's really simple. We just want to make sure that you share this with the rest of your gay community, wherever you're at.
Let's continue in our news tonight as we queue up Vote 2020. It seems like we're in Iowa a lot tonight, and that is Iowa U.S. Senator Joni Ernst has warned today that the GOP will push for impeachment if Joe Biden gets elected. We've prepared this video for you. Watch this.
Iowa caucuses are this next Monday evening, and I'm really interested to see how this discussion today informs and influences the Iowa caucus voters, those Democratic caucus goers. Will they be supporting Vice President Biden at this point?
Biden responded to the Republican senator's comment.
She spilled the beans. She just came out and flat said it. You know, the whole impeachment trial for Trump is just a political hit job to try to smear me because he is scared to death to run against me, and he has good reason to be concerned.
So, going into all that, so Iowa United States Senator Joni Ernst is giving fair warning to Democrats that now, since the House Democrats and other Democrats across the country have advocated for articles of impeachment, they've opened the door to future impeachment proceedings on their future presidents. So perhaps Vice President Biden, who is a leading candidate for President of the United States in the Democratic primary in 2020, should he not only win the nomination, but win the election against Donald Trump in 2020, should he be the nominee, then the GOP, of course, perhaps will consider articles of impeachment against him in regards to an ongoing narrative that just seems to follow the poor country of Ukraine.
We continue. I just don't even have words. We continue in queuing up Vote 2020. Of course, tonight is a significant night because the 2020, especially presidential election, launches tonight in Iowa. And we have prepared the 6 things to look for in tonight's Iowa caucuses. We've prepared this for you. Watch this.
Organized. You've got 4 campaigns, all thoroughly organized and competitive. Joe Biden played pundit on Friday. He said, you know, if it's all 21, 20, 19, 18, we all just go to the next place. There's no real winner. But if he's 4th, he's the big loser in Iowa.
As Al stated, this is the first state to have its presidential primary, which means it's setting a precedent and the momentum that other candidates will carry. And just for fun facts, Iowa, in the last 7 out of 9 competitive Democratic primaries, has had the candidate that has won the caucus and become the party's nominee. So it does have a history of showing where we're leading as a nation. Some of the things to consider in regard to Iowa are who will actually turn out, meaning where they live, what their race is, the age of the participant, and if they are a new or a returning voter. It's also important to keep in mind that it's not just about who comes in first after this primary, but also who comes in second, third, and fourth. Because right now what we're seeing is a push for the people that are a little bit more liberal and the people that are a little bit more conservative, even in the Democratic Party. And what a lot of people are wanting that are a little bit more liberal are to see Warren and Bernie Sanders both get the 1-2 spot. Unfortunately, that is seeming also like a nightmare for others that don't want those two to be in the same spot and arguing for the same vote. I know that we have more conversation going on about how Democrats can siphon the vote and what that might mean, which is what we're seeing fear of in this right here. Additionally, some of the counties that have been historically voting for first Obama and then Trump in the last election are up in the air, and we're determining where they're going to vote as indicators of the rest of the state, including Cerro Gordo, Dubuque, and Clinton counties.
I'm curious, Aaron, we constantly talk about your political expertise at Q News. What do you expect to see tonight?
Well, you know, Iowa, you can never really predict. I mean, just looking at one of the most recent polls and from last week, and then another poll that had come out some days ago, it's completely switched. So I don't take a lot of faith or a lot of stock in polls personally, but I do expect this to be a very good night for Senator Sanders and for former Vice President Joe Biden.
I'm curious, just one sentence, how does Mayor Pete do tonight?
I think that he will do moderately well, but not lead in any sweeping way.
I think Mayor Pete puts cracks in a glass ceiling for LGBT people tonight, win or lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
How does Bernie Sanders do tonight? One sentence, 2 sentences.
I honestly, I can't say. I mean, I'm not supporting him, obviously, but I think that he could possibly win this. But it wouldn't surprise me because Iowa, like New Hampshire, both are overwhelmingly white in terms of their electorate.
90% white.
Yes, 90% white. So if he does well in Iowa, and then of course New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, which are predominantly Latino and of course African American, I don't expect Bernie to do well in those 2 states. So will Iowa and New Hampshire really mean much of anything? Who knows?
Yeah, he'll be starting, because New Hampshire is one of the next ones. He'll be starting strongly.
And,
he will.
And your sentence on how Bernie does?
Bernie Sanders would do really well, and in large part because he's going to get the youth and Latino votes.
Yeah, okay. We continue in queuing up Vote 2020. We stay in Iowa. An Iowa poll, the gold standard, the Des Moines Register final poll that is generally published the Sunday before the Iowa caucus, did not. Iowa poll yesterday was not released because Mayor Pete Buttigieg wasn't named as a candidate in the poll. We've prepared this. Watch.
This is weird, man.
Yeah.
What did you think? I mean, what happened? Can you walk us through how this happened?
I don't know all of the details, but it sounds like somebody identified a glitch where at least some respondents or one respondent wasn't hearing all the names. So they made this decision not to release it.
And it was one of your supporters. So they called one of your supporters.
That's right, yeah.
And they were like, isn't there another name you want to read to me? And they're like, I don't think so.
You know, I wish I could say that this story surprises me, but just as I've even read some of the news that's coming tonight, that some of the results coming out of Iowa are going to be delayed because the application that they use to count how many individuals are caucusing for said candidate is having glitches, having issues. It never surprises me, especially in the state of Florida. So this particularly doesn't surprise me because all too often the history of LGBT people has been a history of silence. So to erase the first openly out candidate for the presidency of the United States for the Democratic nomination for president, I wish I could say that that surprises me, but more than anything, it disappoints me. Whether it's intentional or not, I think that we need to really focus on the history that Pete Buttigieg is making tonight for the LGBTQ community.
You know, it's interesting to me in that this poll, which is the gold standard for the United States in publishing what the final viewpoint of projected Iowans is, was canceled just 5 minutes before the announcement of the poll. How is it, you mentioned Florida and our voting history here in South Florida, how is it possible in a world, in a nation that has both Google and Facebook and Amazon, we can't seem to technically get it right?
Well, this is human error. This is human error. That's why I'm saying there's a live respondent that was doing these surveys. So was it intentional? We don't know. But again, it's interesting and very concerning for me personally is the candidate that they choose to leave out is Pete Buttigieg, who just happens to be LGBT.
You know, speaking of that, let's continue in our final story tonight about the Iowa caucus and queuing up Vote 2020 and talking specifically about Mayor Pete. We have information and want to talk about the effect of Mayor Pete's participation as a presidential candidate and the fact that he has changed the game no matter what happens tonight in Iowa. Aaron, tell us about what the country is saying there.
You know, it's so exciting. I mean, this is like the Super Bowl for me. Is the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary. But with that being said, I mean, I think that we all need to really take a step back and look at the history that's being made tonight. I mean, Pete Buttigieg, win or lose, he's a winner tonight, because regardless of where he places tonight in the Iowa caucus, and should he continue on into New Hampshire and other states, he's really changed the narrative for LGBT people to run for any and all offices across the country, because he's shown himself to be capable, qualified, and ready to lead for whatever office that might be in the future. Should it be the presidency of the United States or any other office that he chooses to run for. But I personally am really proud of him because of the cracks that he puts in glass ceilings.
We reported last week at It's Happening Out that Mayor Pete is leading a big poll nationally as the most popular candidate to run for president in 2024.
Yes.
And it's an interesting poll. So we report extensively tonight. It is a big night. It launches the election of the next president of the United States.
Yes, and that's why Q News tonight is so important, because we also happen to be part of the Happening Out television network. We are the Daily News. But you can also watch the best of entertainment live every Monday, and it's Monday, every Monday night at 8 p.m. on happening.fun. And we are also part of the most popular live gay TV show in the entire world, every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on It's Happening Out. It's like a talk show like television's The View, but it's got a whole lot of gay people, and I think I'm looking at two of them right now.
Right back at you, dude. All right, let's...
Hey, dude!
Let's cue up some sports. This is Q News, after all. And Patrick Mahomes, am I pronouncing it?
Mahomes,
yes. Was named Super Bowl MVP. Remember, the Super Bowl was in our backyard in the gayest place on planet Earth last night, as Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas, Mr. Trump, and the Kansas City Chiefs beat the 49ers. We've prepared this for you. Watch this.
Chiefs fans have waited 50 years for this, and a lot of them have not slept, and a lot of them have been celebrating with families that span generations. I know this is a big moment for you personally, but just tell us what it means for the Chiefs fans and what this means for that entire city right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It honestly is to win this game, the Super Bowl, for not only me and my teammates, but for the coaches, for Kansas City, who's been with us through the ups and downs, and the passion that they show us every year is unmatched. And to get that Super Bowl trophy and be able to take it back to Kansas City, it's amazing.
For many of you that were watching, you know how exciting of a game that this actually was. In the fourth quarter, when many of the big events happened, with just 2 minutes and 44 seconds left, the team the Kansas City went from being at a deficit by over 10 points to then in the last few minutes getting several touchdowns, and even reviewed touchdowns that had to be pushed forward. This was a big first for a lot of different reasons, and who we just saw there, Mahomes, actually I thought was personally really on top of it with his team, who was even just at that 2 minutes left when they were going to win, reminding them to focus and encouraging them to stay in the game. And just some statistics, Mahomes is the third African-American quarterback to win a Super Bowl, the youngest quarterback to win a Super Bowl, the only one to ever get the MVP League Award. That's now then also the youngest Super Bowl to win both. The title and the MVP League Award. He is a record setter for somebody of his age and abilities.
Napoleon, you broke every stereotype about a gay man and sports and football, but let me come back to the stereotype. Aaron, what was your greatest moment of the Super Bowl yesterday?
I would have to say that was probably the Jennifer Lopez concert.
All right.
Featuring
the
Shakira.
jokes write themselves here at Q News tonight. Let's continue on in queuing up sports. And we report about RuPaul. First off, RuPaul is going to host Saturday Night Live this coming Saturday. And she made news on Friday after a Q News report of the first drag queens appearing in a commercial by saying on Friday, after we reported that on Thursday, no, RuPaul was actually the first drag queen to appear in a Super Bowl ad. Aaron, tell us about that story.
Yeah, perfect segue from talking about drag queens like Shakira and Jennifer Lopez to supermodel of the world, RuPaul Charles. So RuPaul Charles, not to ever be dismissed or left out of history, just makes the notion that she was actually the first drag queen to appear in a Super Bowl ad. Ironically, way ahead of her time in 2000 for a commercial and a group called WebEx. Media outlets had, and us included, because I had reported on this previously, that RuPaul's Drag Race stars Kim Chi and Miss Cracker had appeared in a Sabra Hummus commercial, and unfortunately we forgot the past of Miss RuPaul.
Yeah, exactly. So at Q News tonight, we apologize. We got the news wrong.
Yes.
And RuPaul helped correct us. We want to let you know that we are broadcasting from our news set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center here in Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, of course, we joke, as Aaron did at the top of the show, we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth. We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, that helped us create this set, and they're located here in Fort Lauderdale. It moves us into out of sports, into queuing up business. And the little known but important Baltic Shipping Index is reporting today that there are issues about global growth and that perhaps we are in hot water. We've prepared this for you to help you understand what's going on in business. Watch this.
Huge. The Baltic Dry Index has actually fallen 10.5% this week. Factories and cities and some of the world's largest industrial hubs have ground to a halt. This in itself is going to have an impact on the economy.
So that was the Baltic Dry Index, which tells you that if fewer goods are shipped, that the index drops, and that signals that economic growth is about to slump. It is used in conjunction with two other main indicators, which is the price of copper in every form of electronic, as well as the price of oil. Oil is also done in all manufacturing. So with those three forms of indication, you can see where our economy in the world is roughly headed based on those different factors, which are all negative, by the way. They're all on the decline and to a significant level.
Business is going to be very important at Q News tonight because of 2020 and an election year, because many people argue that it's the #1 card that the president has to play for his reelection. We queue up gay culture tonight at Q News tonight, and we're very happy to report that Jennifer Lopez and Shakira have made America gay again with their iconic Super Bowl halftime show. We've prepared this little highlight. Watch this.
Show completely blew our minds. I'm still tingling from the show. It had so much energy. J-Lo and Shakira completely rocked Miami, and honestly, they rocked the world with that performance. Let's take a quick look at some of their performance.
So as is tradition, the gays have endured an insufferably heterosexual hour of football before this concert began, myself included. But all joking aside, so this was historic. This was herstory, guys. So this is huge, especially for Latino women, because this was the first time since 1999 that a Latino woman has headlined the Super Bowl. Of course, in 1999, it was Gloria Estefan. So this is major. And of course, and just watching some of that, I have to say to some of the opponents of equality in this country, that obviously, if you watched last night, the gay agenda has been realized, because gay men coming out dancing in harnesses has seen fruition to over 100 million people, and yes, Jennifer Lopez did so while on a stripper pole. But the most political moment of the show, it was beautiful, of the show came as Jennifer Lopez's daughter, Emma Muniz, sang Born in the USA, while her superstar mother wrapped herself in a feathered cape with the Puerto Rican flag on one side and the US flag on the reverse, all while children of the chorus remain sitting in cages.
America, we can't express, the three of us were talking before the show went live on the air, we cannot express to you the pride that is going on here in South Florida because of the Latin embracement of this Super Bowl halftime show. There is so much pride in the gigantic Latino community we have here in South Florida.
Yeah, and it was genius. That moment that you just described, not only did it bring me to tears at the exact climax of the act, but it also indicated to just the right amount amount of people, just a little bit of politics and of an uprising that needs to happen. Puerto Rico is part of our country. Let's get loud, let's sing, let's give our voice to the children. That is a paramount issue that we're discussing now. The fact that they were in cages in the middle of the Trump administration. All of these things play together in an act of theater that is something that you don't normally get to see at the Super Bowl.
Well,
I was beyond amazed.
And beyond both what Napoleon and Aaron said, I watched a very good football game also. So let's continue in queuing up gay culture. And we want to report on Stonewall activist Marsha P. Johnson. It has been announced today that Marsha P. Johnson is getting a state park in Brooklyn named after her and her efforts at Stonewall. We've prepared this visual image. Watch this.
Governor Andrew Cuomo announced for the first time ever a state park will be named after an LGBTQ pioneer. East River State Park in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, will be named for activist Marsha P. Johnson. She was a transgender woman of color who fought for equality before her death in 1992.
So that was Marsha P. Johnson, the woman who threw the first stone during the Stonewall riots 50 years ago last year. As we saw, Governor Cuomo has announced as the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign of Greater New York's gala, that New York State is the progressive capital of the nation. And while we are winning the legal battle for justice for the LGBTQ community, in many ways we are losing the broader war for equality. This effort of renaming the park, the first one after an LGBTQ activist and person at all, is one of those first steps to make sure that equality in New York is seen among our entire community.
It's really exciting news. It's happening out. Marsha P. Johnson made one of our top 10 Road to Stonewall personalities that was behind our LGBT rights. So this is very exciting news. We cue up inspiration next by telling you that 2 Swedish lawmakers have nominated climate activist Greta Thunberg for the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. We report this now. Watch this.
Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg has been nominated for the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. It's the second time she's been nominated for the award. 2 lawmakers in Sweden nominated for the teenager for the award, saying she's worked hard to make politicians open their eyes to the climate crisis. Thunberg was last year among 4 people to win the Right Livelihood Award and was also named Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
So 17-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg is once again being nominated by her peers far much older than her for the Nobel Peace Prize. Of course, she was nominated last year. She did not win. However, she was recognized, as many of us recall, for being Time's Person of the Year. Nominations actually just ended on February 1st, 2020. So now they will, the committees will eventually meet and they will look over those nominations. And I, for one, am just happy to see that we're talking about her and the climate crisis.
Well, and the big news of the story is being a Gen Zer and leading in the subject of climate. Hopefully, even the discussion of Nobel Peace Prize is inspirational to Gen Zers and millennials here in America that you can take action.
And not just to youth, to anyone that is a marginalized group. It's not just by age, though people are frequently put down because of their age or theoretical lack of experience. Anyone can have a voice. We see that with Greta, and it's important to our entire community, the queer community, and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a wide variety of the news that we are reporting, and that is today's news for the LGBT community on the world's first daily gay evening news show. Remember, if it's important to the LGBT community, it's important to us at Q News Tonight. And so for my broadcast partners, anchors, Aaron Darr and Napoleon Plays, I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and we are literally out of the closet. And with the Super Bowl finishing, we've proven some are even farther out than others, and into the headlines. And America, this is Q News Tonight. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow night.